Gentlemen, in the mid-2000s, track sim racers were on the rise, and in 2008 you could pick between this, or this. If you were like me, you probably picked the last one, and if that is the case, you picked an amazing title, and quite possibly the franchise. Here is the magic of Race Driver Grid. But let's rewind a little, even before Grid. In the late 90s, vehicle motorsport was on the rise. In America there was NASCAR, in Japan there were drift tournaments, and in Europe, and more specifically UK, there was Touring Car Championship, and Codemasters went, "You know what, mate, we should make a game out of that." And then they made TOCA, a touring car racing game that was relatively well received, which got a fair share of sequels. What made TOCA special was the sheer enjoyability that the game brought. The game was a simulation racer in its core with a bit of arcade aspects to the game to bring in casuals. And that aspect of arcadeifying a sim, or in better terms, making a simcade, is what the team had in mind while making Grid, and it paid off. Race Driver Grid released in 2008, and you can see that. Or more accurately, you can see, as the piss filter is incredibly strong. You see, piss filter was common in this era of gaming, where the eyesight was honestly a luxury rather than a necessity. And it was especially common from Codemasters, as Dirt, their other game, had blinding bloom and piss filter. Of course, if you are on PC, there are mods that could fix that, but console players enjoyed the game with that crisp, eye-searing filter. Even so, the graphic fidelity is amazing, especially for the time, especially with the stuff like cockpit camera being detailed. The menu presentation is so 2008, but it's amazing. I don't know, but the 3D text just makes any game look better. You might ask yourself, Chris, enough with the visuals. How actually is the game? Yeah, it fucks. To put it simply, the arcadification of the game was amazing, as the game is just not boring, which most simcades fail at that aspect. Starting off with the career, the game tests you by giving you a dodge wiper and placing you on the suspension killer map, San Francisco. And first thing you will notice is that this game is kinda batshit insane. To continue with the career, after you finish that race you get to do contracts for companies to earn money to start off with your team. After you get the money, you start your own team, and you get to race in 3 separate leagues, which have 3 separate badges. US League, with primarily US street tracks and mostly US cars, EU League, with EU licensed tracks, and Japanese League, which has drift and togue oriented tournaments. Each have their flares, and from my experience, the Japanese League is the most fun. To start off, most of the events in this game are just race events that are just separated into classes. From touring cars to stuff like classic, import tuners, GT cars, and even LM prototypes. The most batshit insane one that is sadly underutilized is the stock car demolition racing. Whilst other classes don't encourage crashing into others, Demolition Derby incentivizes you to crash out other cars to win. Granted, an oversight by Codemasters was the lack of penalty for any other class. Yes, you can just take down other racers by any means necessary, and the game's like, lol. Lamau even. Go ahead, pit maneuver that guy and go kill the other guy. I like to think of this game as being a flat out game with licensed cars. Speaking of cars, a cool mechanic is that you buy cars. I know, a truly cool mechanic. The cool part of it is that you can buy new cars or you can buy used on Yes, you can buy used cars on eBay. This is a cool mechanic. You see, used cars have a value to them. If a car has a high win rate, which is hard-coded to be up to 50%, the cars will have a performance boost. Alongside that, If a car has had multiple wrecks and has a large mileage, it will get damaged easier. This is a really cool mechanic that gives you a reason to get used cars over new cars. Another aspect that ties to buying cars are the sponsors. You start by getting 3 sponsors, but the more you win, the more sponsors will notice you. Additionally, the first sponsor slot is the major sponsor slot, which gives you the biggest reward for completing their objective. And as you progress through the game, the sponsor requirements will get more strict and harder, but the payouts will also be much greater. Now to get back to racing. Le Mans endurance events are here in this game at the end of every season. Le Mans is a 24-hour event, or 20 minutes in real time, where you race a GT car against the others in your class, and the goal is to survive. The map does have some scary parts that if you pull off give you a massive advantage by cheating. Another cool idea is that you get to see a dynamic time of day, but honestly it's kind of a boring event, and I tend just to skip them. Japanese events have TOCA, which are 1v1s, and are separated into day TOGAs and night TOGAs. Only difference is that night TOGAs have the added risk of a Delicetti jump scare in the form of traffic. Otherwise the events are the same. The main goal is to have a shorter race time than the opponent. Hitting the opponent gives you a time penalty, so try not to hit the opponents. Drifting is cool. Main goal in all of the events is to get the most points. Each drift that lasts at least a second gives you a multiplier with no limits to it, which means that if you consistently chain drifts, and if you drift at a great angle pretty fast, depending on the map, you can get 1,000,000 points per race. Drifting next to the large orange poles give you a generous score bonus, which if you score perfectly with a 10 times multiplier is quite a lot. The drift events are split into 3 types. Drift GP, which is located on a track, Freestyle Drift, which is semi-open world racing, and instead of lap has a time limit, and Drift Battle. Drift Battle sucks. I know that racing while drifting is cool, but the AI wants to take you out, and if you crash, you don't get points. Additionally, the lower place you are, the less points you get. Another events that suck are the open wheel events. Formula handling is not that great, and the AI really likes to get stuck in between your wheels and spin you out. It's a good thing that the AI is amazing in other classes. Where do I even start? I guess I can start with the AI predictability, or better yet, lack of one. The AI will kill you if they want. They also react to mistakes that other racers do. The AI difficulty is a bit interesting. While on low difficulties they are normal and are balanced, at the higher difficulties on some classes, the rubber band will go insane for the first place, practically making the first place finish impossible. This was especially noticeable on the prototype final event, on Savage difficulty. Additionally, the handbrake on the prototypes are borderline useless, so I couldn't even catch up. The rubber band alone is crazy, but what is crazier is the lack of regard for safety on the AI on harder difficulties. The AI will treat you like the policeman would treat Mexicans with a broken taillight. They will do anything in their way to overtake you, ranging from cutting you off to just bumping into you and spinning you out. Now I forgot to mention that another aspect of this insane AI is the fact that you get to hire a teammate, that each have various stats, from being careful drivers that are somewhat slow to drivers that are aggressive and a bit careless. That carelessness is one of the aspects that makes the AI unpredictable. You see, most of the times the AI will either spin out or just straight out wreck. Your teammates are not immune from that. They will crash out, however it is completely dynamic. And with the flashback feature you can undo the mistake of your teammates. Oh yeah, this game has flashback. Flashback is a feature where you can go back in time to fix whatever mistake was done. Grid might be a first game actually that had the flashback feature. You can pick a certain time from a few moments ago to go back to, so you can do corrections to avoid the mistake you have done. Like if you crashed into a wall and caused massive damage. Oh yeah, this game has the best damage bottle I have ever seen. Back in 2000s, most games with licensed cars had limited damage to no damage whatsoever. Most car brands want to avoid damage however they can, and limit the damage itself. In most cases, chassis damage is non-existent. In 2007, Need for Speed pushed the boundaries with Pro Street, and whilst you could see serious damage like torn doors and even stripped panels, they only happened to get damaged when your car was totaled. Codemasters said fuck that pussy shit and proceeded to raw dog it with their damage model. You could turn a perfectly great looking skyline into this. and you would still win. Oh, and as you saw, the game has no corner cutting, which means you can do some cool shortcuts that are also risky. But yet, the damage was sick, and additionally, the cars had this sort of damage scar system where if you didn't wash your car and clean it, they would progressively look more scratched up from all of the previous damage you have done. Here's a fun fact, car brands got very upset over the damage model that Grid had, and was toned down for future entries. Thank you, car brands. Go fuck yourself. Handling is interesting. Back in the day, it has been panned by the fans of the Race Driver franchise for being too arcadey, and I can understand them. However, the handling was designed purely for casuals in mind, and I can understand Codemaster's intention, considering if the game had more realistic handling, it very much wouldn't do well financially. The handling is grippy, with no real dread of oversteering and spinning out. The only thing that can spin you out are grass and sand areas, as those are designed to kill the car's speed in the shortest time possible. Additionally, the brakes on some classes can be useless. When you discover that handbrakes, and more accurately drifting, is better at taking corners. Nevertheless, the handling is personally fine, and I really don't have any to complain about it. The only thing that is left to talk about this game is the audio, and my god. Starting off with the weakest aspect of the audio, the engine sounds are bad. They are Gran Turismo vacuum tier bad. That is all the negatives. The ambient sound is amazing, especially the crowd reacting to yours or rivals' mistakes and crashes. Some even yell when you hit a wall. Car collision sounds are amazing as well, and the announcers are almost Need for Speed Pro Streets levels of detailed, including them being hyped about stuff like the Japanese announcer being super excited when you get a high drift combo or pull a long drift. The music in this game is an art piece in itself. I'm gonna start off simple. The menu music is good. It hits that special itch when you start the game for the first time, and as you progress through the game and your garage upgrades, the music does well. You have 2 upgrades to the garage in your team, so the menu theme gets better and better. Okay, that was the simple part. This game has dynamic soundtrack. Okay, I will get nerdy as fuck. Please hang on. Each race song has 8 tracks, or to be more accurate, 6, as track 1 and 5 and 2 or 6 are split to stereo tracks. Each track has its purpose, and thanks to Wojak for the explanation. That dude is like the MVP when it comes to the ego engine stuff. Alright, so track 3 is the bass track that plays through the race for the most part of the track. Track 2 and 6 are the tracks that play alongside track 3 when you are in a moving position. Then track 4 kicks in when you are going above approximately 120 km per hour. Track 7 kicks in when you are in the first place, and track 1 and 5 are for when you are in the final lap. Track 8 plays when you are both leading and are above 160 km per hour. This whole system is impressive. What is even more impressive is that the music is just generally quite amazing. No, seriously. Ian Paul Livingstone is a legend when it comes to composing music for video games, which included the likeness of Project Gotham Racing, Warhammer 40k, F1 games, and more importantly, the modern version of the... Wait, am I reading that right? The modern version of the Nokia ringtone. The composition is mostly EDM mixed with occasional orchestral music and is super tense, especially when you are on the final lap of the race. And that sweet final lap track kicks in. The feeling that you get from the track alone makes you tense up and makes races that much better. The only downside is that those amazing tracks play on races right before you unlock the next badge for a league, or in Raven West races, which is honestly a wasted opportunity. Wasted opportunities will be a reoccurring thing, by the way. With that, Razor's Edge is honestly the best track in the entirety of the game, and is a staple as it has been brought back in almost every subsequent sequel. With that, I think that is it. I mean, I can talk about all the small details like how the crowd actually reacts by moving away when you crash into them, or how the driver actually follows the road bends. But if I did, this video would probably go from, I don't know, around 30 minutes to something like 4 hours. With that high of a game, you would think that Grid 2 would be an improvement. And after 5 years of waiting, we got sequel to Peak. Few things before the next section though. Like the video, that would be pretty based, I think. Subscribing? Don't worry about it. Back to our regularly scheduled program. This game is interesting, and I can tell you, writing this section was a pain. Instead of immediately ranting, I will first talk about the positives. The game looks amazing. Piss Filter went the way of the dodo, and for the better. I really have to say, this game genuinely looks amazing for the year it released in. Granted, I find that around this year, graphics in video games have peaked. The UI got an addition of a lap progress meter, which is a cool feature. The menu presentation is pretty cool, not grid cool, but still cool. The car sound is a bit better. That is it. That's all of the good stuff. Oh, and there was a £125,000 edition of the game that gave you a car, IRL. Let's start off with the bad. You know how I mentioned that Grid had this amazing dynamic soundtrack? Yeah, it's gone. In fact, I didn't even get to hear any of the soundtrack during the races. I've been told that the music plays only on the final laps of the events, or at the last quarter of a single lap track. I heard nothing. Additionally, the garage menu, while still having garage upgrade music upgrades, is personally not as good as the first game. Grid 2's music that I did listen on YouTube is another set of bangers, as Livingstone has worked on this title as well. Speaking of garage, the career mode is not that good. It's much more linear. Stuff like Le Mans, even though I didn't fully like in the first game, it still was a neat thing that I wanted to experience once or twice. It's now fully gone in Grid 2. Team management, another cool aspect of the first Grid, non-existent. Economy? What is that? You cannot buy any cars. Instead, you are given a choice to pick a car, and for the cars you don't pick, you have to do some challenge events. Instead of money, you now earn fans. Fans serve zero purpose and is completely useless mechanic. Races have also undergone a change. While circuit events have stayed the same, there have been a few new additions. Sprint races have been added, and honestly, it's a pretty good feature. Races aren't super long and are a breath of fresh air. Sprint events are basically TOCA events, but without backtracking and with more than one rival. Elimination events are good. They function basically like elimination events work in Burnout Revenge. There is a timer that once goes down to 0 eliminates the last place. It's a pretty cool and a welcome event. Checkpoint event is a timed race where you have to go through checkpoints to extend your time and pass rivals. You end the event when you run out of time, and the place you are at is your finishing place. Time gain gets progressively more and more stingy until it is impossible to gain time. This mode would be great if it wasn't for the fact that it just drags on. Car passing events are also a thing, where the goal is for you to overtake more trucks with a higher combo than your opponent. The more you overtake, the higher the bonus is. Crash will result in a bonus reset. This game mode is kinda mid. The trucks take interesting lines, do not have any awareness regarding you, and are just big and bulky in general. If the trucks were much smaller, it wouldn't have been a weak event. Time trial is basically like the one in Need for Speed Pro Street. You want to have the quickest lap time, but so do the rivals. I enjoy this mode as I can flex my skills in beating the shit out of rivals. Drift events have been simplified, to say at the least. There is only one drift event, and it literally functions the same way like it functions in Need for Speed Pro Street. You have a certain short section, and you want to do better than rivals. The cones count as multipliers now, as long as you drift near their vicinity. Yes, chaining drifts does jack shit. Drift events were mostly fun in Grid. In here, it's really just garbage. This game feels less like Grid and more like Need for Speed, and that is purely because the closed circuit tracks have been severely reduced in favor of street tracks. Additionally, the variety of cars have been sacked. No more LMP cars, no more prototypes, GT selection has been neutered. It's just a sad sight. Now, funnily enough, even though the game feels more like a Street Racer title, the new feature of corner cutting penalty has been added. Why? It's only there to piss you off, because the game doesn't feel like a sim racer, yet it has the aspect of a sim racer by slowing you down. It additionally is way too stingy and completely kills off slight cutting to overtake any opponent, which is hard in this game. Cockpit camera is gone. Granted, I haven't used it much, but I know a decent amount of people hated the fact that Grid 2 removed the cockpit cam, but lack of details is something that will follow the franchise. The flashback feature that I loved in Grid has been completely ruined. Gone is the ability to pick a certain moment. Instead, the game just goes back in time and you have to press the exact moment to flashback to. So if you go way back, well, eat shit, Lamal. Additionally, you cannot cancel the flashback. So if your flashback is useless because the furthest flashback point is still moments from crashing with no ways of recovering, tough fucking luck, the flashback is used. That also means if you have the flashback button next to a button you use, and you accidentally press the flashback, you are shit out of luck as again, you cannot cancel the flashback. The feature has been unnecessarily neutered, and sadly will not have any improvements in the future titles. The AI is okay. I mean, it's kinda hard, but it's not really an AI issue. It's more of an issue with the handling, which is my biggest gripe with this game. The handling, which Codemasters called true feel handling, can be described in 2 words. Fucking dog shit. Codemasters are going for a more realistic handling after hearing the criticism of Grid's handling being too arcadey, and followed it up with the worst garbage handling ever imaginable. No, really, this could rival Need for Speed 2015 with how bad the handling is. Playing this the intended way on a keyboard or a controller is borderline impossible. It simply is. You see, in their infinite wisdom, Codemasters decided that to emulate real race car driving, they removed all of the assists. Yep, no ABS, no traction control, no stability control, and what resulted was the most unstable handling ever made in a racing game. The game has 3 car classes: grip, balance, and drift. Now honestly, it's simple. This game is brake to drift. However, while it's also brake to drift, it's also understeery. Yes, you have to slow down to then basically oversteer, but without understeering at the same time and hitting a wall. And that is not even the kicker. The true kicker is that those 3 classes are irrelevant. In fact, they are opposite of what they are supposed to do. Balanced? Still balanced, don't mind that. But the grip cars are better at drifting than the drift cars. In fact, the drift cars are actually completely useless. This handling model was so infuriating that I genuinely decided to not finish the game. It was actively hindering the gameplay as the AI had no issues with the abysmal dogshit handling. This is by far the worst Grid game I have played. It's a shame that it will not get better. Grid Autosport is a game of all times. In 2019, Codemasters decided to reboot the franchise with the title called Grid. Oh, you want me to talk about Autosport? First off, I want to ask you a question. What is Grid's identity as a franchise? I won't talk about the newer 2 games as I haven't covered them both, and frankly both are irrelevant to this topic. Grid 1 has set itself as more arcadey but somewhat serious racing game with a bit of a grittiness to it. It has a certain style and theme that the latest 2 entries kind of followed. Grid 2 has tried setting itself as a more sim racer. Granted, failing at it, but it also turned into more of a street racer title, with more lower class cars and less supercars. Its style was distinct and still different from the first title, but it had set its identity. Grid Autosport is an identity crisis. With the last 2 games having differing styles, it was honestly expected that Autosport was going to be different. What we got was a bland, boring game with nothing interesting to it that drags on for too long. And you might go, Chris, this game released 1 year later as a response to Grid 2's handling model being dog shit. Yes, but fuck you, cause the whole game was a brand new title that costed actual money, and it brought nothing to the table. Let's start with the good, because shockingly this game does have positive aspects. Handling isn't complete dog shit. Assists have been added and the tendency of the car to oversteer was completely removed. Granted, assists are completely useless aside from the ABS. Stability assist and traction control are too strong to the point where your car will understeer and slow down. Yep, the assists actively hinder you. I understand that Codemasters only had the time to use Grid 2's handling model, but they could have done so much more, especially considering that the handling was well made with the first Grid game. The damage indicators are back in the HUD, no more triangle that didn't show what damage was sustained to the car. Additionally, your mechanic tells you what part of the car has been damaged. Drawback: every car gets damaged too easily. Now, I would understand if it matched the visual damage, like in Grid, or if it was an actual simulator like Project Cars, but the damage could have been toned down just a little bit. The audio got an upgrade. The car sounds are definitely a step above from the last 2 games. Music is eh. The menu audio is kinda mid. The replay audio is still good. Race audio is completely gone though to make the game more immersive, or in my case and more accurately, more bland and boring dog shit. Cockpit camera is back. It's fucking disgusting and just bad. I could explain why it's bad, but I think this clip will tell everything. To remind you what a good cockpit cam is, here is Grid, a game that released 6 years before. In fact, here is Colin McRae Rally 2, a game that released 15 years before. Teammates are back and they have gotten an upgrade, with the option of you telling the teammate to play more aggressively or more defensively. Nice feature, ruined by the fact that you can't hire teammates, as you yourself are not in your own team, but instead you race for other teams and contractors. That also means that the financial part of the game, yet again, is not here. Instead of money, you now receive XP, which levels up your class standing in the career mode. I will talk about that later. That's all the positive this game has. And even then I found the negatives instead positives. This game looks bland. The vibrance that 2 had with these maps is completely gone in Autosport. The game just visually looks boring and just worse. The career blows. No, seriously, it has been simplified to the point where instead of region-based badges like Grid, the career is separated into classes. Each class is separated into events that have 4 to 6 races. Once you reach level 3 in all classes, you get a Grid series event. So something like a big tournament. Do that 2 more times and you win the game. Seems cool. There are flaws. First flaw, there is no freedom in car picking. Instead, you sign a contract for one of the few teams and you stick to a preset of few cars. Needlessly, this is a dogshit concept. And it's funny how previous games completely shit on this game regarding that aspect. Drift events have been changed yet again. It's not abysmal dogshit like in Grid 2, but it's still not as good as Grid. No more multipliers, you can only drift in bends, and now there is a qualifier system, with 2 heat per round system afterwards, to the point where the event drags on for too long. In fact, I am playing this at normal pacing. You can extend the pacing of the game if you want, increasing the duration of the events, and with all of the stupid decisions, like the over-aggressive corner cutting detection, the game, even on normal pacing, drags on. Each event can last ranging from 6 minutes to 10 minutes. If the game wasn't long by itself, I would probably tolerate the game. But the game has so much padding and races last for too long, I honestly gave up partway playing the game. And while Grid 2's handling model made me quit, Autosport was just incredibly boring. I wanted to say that this game was better than Grid 2 because of its handling, but no, Grid 2 at least was a little bit fun and looked good. This game is just worse because it's just completely soulless and boring. Thankfully, Grid 2019 was better, and by a decent margin. I'm going to start this off by saying that this game is a great foundation for the series. By that, I mean this game could be improved, but the core gameplay is honestly quite good. Now, I know, some people that have played Grid 2019 will go, "Chris, are you high?" Yes, but that's not relevant to this. Don't worry, this game has flaws and I will talk about them, but this game is generally better than Autosport was. Starting off, the game is beautiful. No, seriously, the visuals are great. The game goes for stylized realism, and the detail with this game is quite good. Stuff like the cockpit camera returns in full form and it's fully detailed, minus some silly bugs like the gauges on the Datsun having its own mind. The game also feels like an actual Grid game, as it matches what Race Driver Grid and Grid 2 felt like. A tiny bit like a festival racer, with the vibes and just the general structure of those games. The game audio is good, the cars actually sound great. In fact, the sound design team recorded over 70 cars for just this game, recording every minute detail like the gear shifting, cabin audio, and most importantly, the engine and exhaust sound. Overall, it's a massive improvement over the last few games. The tracks that have been present in previous games are back, with the addition of decent amount of new maps, most being live recreations like the return of suspension braking San Francisco and entirely fictional Okutana for TOCA races. Additionally, DLC added tracks like Suzuka and Red Bull Ring. Granted, the tracks weren't the only thing that were added. The car list has been expanded, and tiers have been divided even more. Now, that doesn't matter much considering how the career is structured, but it's a nice detail. One new addition to the game that the chat was seemingly receptive to was the Devil's Z. Well, of course, it wasn't actually the Devil's Head, but you know, haha, funny One Gun Midnight reference. We did lose out on 2 car brands, Mercedes and McLaren, which is a shame, as I would have liked to see the McLaren F1 or P1, but it is what it is. Sadly, the next game will follow suit with the lack of those cars. Another cool detail with the cars is that the wear mechanic, or as I would like to call it, battle scars, return. The more you damage your car, the more scratches will show in the following events. Unlike in the original grid, cleaning the car is just a matter of pressing the trigger, so it's super fast and easy. The car handling is amazing, the cars are reactive, grippy, and you can pull some very nice skids. The oversteer and understeer combo has been completely wiped, and the handling alone is really enjoyable and doesn't make the entire playthrough miserable. AI is also updated, as they will react to you and acknowledge your existence, and are more reactive to mistakes. Additionally, the AI will pull risky moves and pretty much gamble if they pull it off or crash out. A new feature is the Nemesis system. You see, in previous grid games, you could play like a dickhead and the AI will literally not care. Their goal is to win, no matter what. In here, the AI is out to get you, and my god will they try. They will try to spin you out, or just flat out kill you. Additionally, you can turn your teammate into a nemesis, which is fucking funny to me. Penalties have been reworked. With the previous 2 games, corner cutting was horrible. You would get a speed penalty with no way of avoiding it. In here, the penalty is basically a 2-second penalty added to your final time. Cut corner 3 times and you get disqualified. You can cancel the penalty if you slow down while cutting the corner to minimize the cheating impact. This game is shaping up to be pretty good. What is wrong with it, you might say? Just like the PlayStation 5 owners are arguing on Twitter instead of playing games on it, because it has none. Notice how instead of me talking about the career, I'm talking about the rest of the game, because it has none. The career is not good. Don't get me wrong, there is a ton of content, especially with the DLCs combined, adding almost twice the events compared to the base game, and if you are a fan of TOCA games, you might genuinely like this game. If you are like me, a grid fan, you will notice a glaring issue. A positive is that the game is back to using the currency system, where you have to buy cars, which is a cool feature. Additionally, you can earn cash by doing quick races. The game structure is alright. You get 13 events. You have to complete 10 events in each class, of which there are 5. Invitational class does not count, as you have to beat the events in other classes to unlock events in an invitational class. Once you beat 10 events in a class, you unlock a final showdown event. Beat 4 of those, and you get to do Grid World Series event. Beat that, and you beat the game. This wouldn't be an issue. And again, if you're a fan of TOCA games, it is not. Notice how I didn't talk about event types? Time to talk about it. You have circuit and sprint races, time attacks, oh, that's it? Wow. That is honestly disappointing. The game doesn't drag on unlike Grid Autosport, but still, even that game had a variety when it came to event types. This honestly brings down the game immensely when it comes to the enjoyment of the game and the quality itself. Another few negative aspects to this game is the fact that the sense of speed is not that good compared to previous grid games. Additionally, the damage model is just not that great. I know the damage is weaker because of the car brands being bitchy, but the damage is still too limiting visually. Is this the worst grid? No. But is it the best grid game? Not even close. That leaves us with the last entry of the series, and whilst it's a massive step up, it's also the most unfortunate entry in the series. Before I talk about the game though, let me talk about the major event that happened after the release of the Grid reboot. In November 2020, Codemasters announced that they have approached to be acquired by Take-Two Interactive. They both agreed to an approximate buyout worth around $1 billion, which would have meant that Codemasters would have operated under the 2K label. It seemed like the deal was actually going to close until in January 2021, EA went, I smell a company that's about to be purchased. I know what I gotta do. EA made a $1.2 billion deal which Codemasters' board of directors agreed to and signed a month later. Now if you know something about Electronic Arts, it's that they are known for 2 things. Killing long-standing franchises and killing long-standing companies. My fellow viewer, I sense a foreshadowing. Anyways, on 25th of February 2022, Grid Legends released. So you know how I talked about Grid 2019 being a great foundation for the franchise? Well, it seems like Codemasters themselves thought of that, as Grid Legends is a massive improvement over the last game. Whilst Grid 2019 was technically good, Legends goes the extra mile to keep the game great. Visually, this game hasn't had much of a change. Granted, 2019 was visually great to start with, so improvements weren't really a necessary thing. One step back is that the car damage model has taken a massive drawback since the last few games. Parts can still fall off, and in this game they really do fall off, especially if you flashback cause Ego Engine. But the parts don't deform like the previous games. It just feels too sterile. Additionally, and this was an annoying part, the game had some serious micro stutters. This could have been because of recording, but micro stutters proceeded to be more annoying and stronger the more I played without restarting. Car sounds are also seemingly worse than the previous game. The track list with the DLC is pretty much the same, just like Grid is, amount-wise, but this game has added even more weathers, including but not limited to sunny Red Bull Ring, rainy night in San Francisco, and snow on an oval track. Yeah, you heard me. Oval tracks with stock cars that have slick tires race on snow. I cannot make sense out of that as well. Car list has had a slight increase in the form of destruction derby cars and drift cars. Oh yeah, they made the game good when it comes to events. Drift events got brought back, and my god, it feels just like the original Grid game, with you being able to drift whenever you want, cones giving you extra points, granted in this case, much lower than Grid's, and the combo bonus being back. Which means if you stack consecutive drifts, you can earn ton of score. My god, I am shocked. Two things I do dislike though are the handbrake strength being a bit too strong when it comes to slowing down the car instead of locking the rear wheels, and too much randomly placed objects on the track which do stop your combo. Nevertheless, it's still a better iteration of the drift event than the last two games that included it. Destruction derby races are a thing again, which is a cool feature, I guess. It would be cooler if these derby cars actually had a good damage model, but it is what it is. Endurance events are new. Endurance events are cool. I'm too ADHD to finish them. Electric races are basically circuit events, but with zones where if you enter you gain boost. E-nitros, if you may like. It's pretty interesting. There are much more events, and it's a grid game with most event types, so you really can do a ton of events. I will talk about the big new changes to the game, but firstly, let me talk about the physics. Now the handling is good. It's more tighter than 2019, and it honestly is second best handling model. The physics itself? It's the grid game with the most goofiest physics model. The amount of times where my car turned into a ramp for the opponents, knocking them out effectively, was unreal. In fact, taking out the opponents is quite possibly the easiest in this franchise, if the newly unpredictable AI doesn't do it already by itself. Yep, AI can make big mistakes again. The whole system makes races super interesting. And with that, I think it's time to talk about the big changes that the franchise got. Firstly, if you played grid games before Legends, you might notice that you are forced to have a teammate, and for the most part, they are completely useless. In here, they are useless, if you don't consider upgrading them. Yes, this game has a perk tree system for your teammates, where if you upgrade perks, teammates get much better at doing races. It is honestly a huge improvement. Even in its rather simple form, teammates are crucial, and this is a godsend. Additionally, garage upgrades are also a thing, where you get to improve your team's effectiveness, which help you financially in the long run. Now this is only impactful in the career mode, which is structured like the older grid games. This game has a story mode. Yep, story. Now here is my thought on that, and to modify the quote from a certain creator, story in a simcade racing games is like having a story in porn. Completely unexpected, yet a welcome addition. Now, I will not spoil the story, but it's quite an interesting story. If you think that a closed-circuit racing game wouldn't have drama, I'm here to disappoint you. There is drama, cliffhangers, even shocking reveals. I cannot forget about the music. Now, Matt Willett did a decent job with the music, but Codemasters brought back Ian Livingstone. Needless to say, that man has cooked. And additionally, with the rise of the Raven West DLC, we were gifted with god-tier grid remastered music. My god, he nailed it. He fucking nailed it. Additionally, the soundtrack is semi-dynamic. It's not as detailed as Grid, but it's still a welcome addition. Collisions muffle the tone of the track alongside other stuff affecting it. Seriously, this is a good game, like a genuinely good game, with honestly little flaws. It's not perfect, but it's a genuinely good game overall. And this is where we have to talk about the truly sad and unfortunate part of the game. Remember how I talked about the part of EA killing franchises? Well, in 2016, Respawn Entertainment released Titanfall 2, by far my favorite first-person shooter. Now, why am I mentioning it? Well, EA did the smartest thing. Note, I am saying that sarcastically, and released Titanfall 2, a relatively fresh franchise, a week after Battlefield 1 released, which was a massive success, and a week before Call of Duty Infinite Warfare and Modern Warfare Remastered released, which both were massive successes at the time. Unsurprisingly, Titanfall 2 was a commercial failure, and the franchise pretty much died without a sequel in sight. Guess what EA did again? It pulled something even funnier. Grid Legends released on the same day as Elden Ring released, and a week before Gran Turismo 7 did, with little to no marketing for the game. I remember seeing absolutely no hype for this game, and in fact, I still know that there are people that are still unaware that this game released. Needless to say, just like the Dirt franchise, we will never see another Grid game, which is honestly a shame. I guess if anything, the franchise has ended at least on a high note, which I know that some franchises have not gotten the same fate. Anyways, I am off. This video was a blast to make, and it made me revisit a franchise I had cared about and a game I loved as a kid, and talk to friends about in my school. See you all in the next video.